We have some very strong opinions and ideas, and I think we'll probably state those opinions now.
On to the leaders questioning each other. I want to focus here on a couple of things. So the first thing I'm going to play is this clip I labeled as Poilievre being human, because I think it's really important. And it was kind of from this area. And then I'm going to play Poilievre and Mark Carney questioning each other, because I think this is the one part in the debate where Mark Carney completely effed up, and you'll see why in a minute here.
But on the other side, I had a rule that at all my rallies, even when they're really big, I would stand in front of a flag and greet every single person and hear their stories and learn their struggles. And that was always touching to me, that they would put their faith in me or in any of us.
Yeah.
But we've been in such a rush because we have to get off to the next event. So we haven't been able to stop and do that. And I want you to know out there, I haven't forgot about you.
Fred, what do you make of that?
Yeah, what do we make of that? Okay, hang on, I do have another clip. Oh, there we go. No, that wasn't it. Videos.
His opportunity to ask the question of whomever he'd like here, and that will be
Mr. Carney. But if I could begin by setting the stage. The choice in this election is, after a lost Liberal decade of rising cost and crime and a falling economy under America's thumb, do we want to elect them to a fourth term? Or do we want to change so that you can afford food and homes, change so that you can be safe on your street, and your change so that your paycheck grows faster than your cost of living, change with a new conservative government? Because Mr. Carney is not change. Mr. Carney, in 2020, it was recorded, you began advising Justin Trudeau. It's still on the Liberal Party website today that you are Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. They might want to update your website on that. On June 3rd of 2021, you said that inflation would be a sign of economic progress. And you advised governments, including Justin Trudeau's, your Liberal government, to print money, which led to the worst inflation crisis in a generation. Now, that means that mothers went to bed with empty fridges and empty bank accounts, worried how they'd feed their kids, that seniors worried they'd be evicted from their homes, that young people believe they'd never be able to own a home in the first place. Now, in retrospect, you look back on the Liberal decisions that you advised Justin Trudeau to take. Will you look at the camera in the eye and apologize to the many people who suffered as a result of the inflationary policies that you advised Justin Trudeau to implement?
You know, I said earlier, but I'm going to say it again. I know you want to be running against Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau isn't here.
Are you denying
I
you
am
were his
here.
economic advisor?
I did not provide any of that advice. I did not provide any of that advice.
On the Liberal Party website. Are you accusing your Liberal Party of lying about your role? Because it says today you can go to the Liberal Party website now, and it says that you were Justin Trudeau's economic advisor.
The way you judge someone, in my view, is how they act, what they do when they have responsibility. Twice I was a central bank governor. And in both cases, if I may, in both cases when I was responsible for inflation, inflation was less than 2%. I'll add that when I was here responsible for the Bank of Canada, inflation was less than 2%. Our dollar was at parity. That is the kind of success that I can deliver for this country coming out of this crisis. And what is at stake here? What is at stake here? What is at stake here?
That gave us the worst inflation that we have had in a generation, because the policies that you implemented and those of the MPs that are still in your ministry.
To the
fellow Canadians,
crisis which
the last 10 years has been about the Liberals. The next 10 years should be about you.
And that's time. Mr. Carney, good news is the next question is yours.
Well, I'm going to ask myself a question. Actually, I'm going to ask a question which has been troubling me. And it's troubling me because, we are in a very dangerous and divided world.
Who is it to?
I'm going to ask a question, Mr. Poilievre. Why not? We're in a dangerous and divided world. We talked earlier about the challenges in the Middle East, the threats from Iran, threats from Russia, Russia's aggression in Ukraine. We have the threats from China, which I raised. We have the United States, which is fundamentally changing its security relationships, its commercial relationships. We have all this. And in the context of that, everyone on this stage, Mr. Blanchet, Mr. Singh, myself, we have our top secret security clearance. We have our top secret security clearance. I got mine within 3 weeks. It wasn't hard, but I felt it was important that I had it so I could be in a position to be informed about that dangerous world and take decisions that. And Mr. Poilievre, it is now 950 days, if my numbers are right, since you've had the opportunity to get your top secret security clearance, and you've refused. Why?
Well, first of all, I have got my security clearance when I was a minister. I got top secret clearance at the time, so there's no problem getting that. But when the government made this recent offer, they said that if I got the secret security clearance briefings, that I would be gagged under the security law, and I could be prosecuted if I spoke freely about matters of foreign interference. Now, given that Canada has experienced Chinese interference by Beijing, the government of China, in 2 consecutive elections, I needed to do my job to speak freely without fear of prosecution. And that was not something I would be allowed to do. Even Thomas Mulcair, the former leader of the NDP, said that when he was the leader of the opposition, he never would have accepted the kind of gag order that your government and Mr. Trudeau's government was attempting to impose on me. And it's good that I made that decision, because it has allowed me to speak freely about things like the case where one of your candidates, sir, actually said that he wanted to send a political opponent to China under a bounty threatening his life or imprisonment, and you refused to get rid of him. Now, it might have something to do with the fact that you went to China not long ago to get a $250 million loan for your company. But the reality is, you refused to stand up for a Canadian who was being threatened by a foreign government. And I was able to speak freely on that matter because I refused the gag order that the Liberal government attempted to impose on me.
Well, there's a couple of interesting things. I think people at home have seen a robust debate here, and it's been a robust campaign, and it has not stopped Mr. Blanchet or Mr. Singh at times during his campaign by making challenges with respect to these issues. So one can address it. I will observe, as someone with the top secret security clearance, that China is not the only country that is accused of foreign interference. And
gentlemen, that is time.
We'll leave
for
it
the
at
segment. That's our time.
Let's start with Poilievre's question. And before we get into it, I think it's really important to note, and Mark Carney didn't do a good job of, I don't know why he didn't push this point home, but yes, Mark Carney was Justin Trudeau's economic advisor, but we don't know what advice Mark Carney gave him and what he chose to do. So we don't know, Justin Trudeau could have just ignored everything Mark Carney said, and we wouldn't know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let you take it first.
Yeah, and you make a good point there, and and I think people have to understand that first and foremost. And I think people have to understand, when you're in those roles of economic advisor, whatever positions they are advising these people, ultimately, depending on the leader, it's up to the leader to decide what they want to take and what they want to accept. So yes, he was close to the prime minister. Yes, he probably had the ear of him, but at the same time, Justin Trudeau was the leader, and at the time, if he wanted certain things, he would have done certain things anyway. So I think people have to take a step back and look at the fact that just because you're quote unquote economic advisor doesn't mean you are going to get all your ideas pushed through, and nor would they go through all the time. So that's the first point. The second point is that, I don't think Mark Carney personally did a great job with standing up for himself here. and I think that's kind of, lightly saying it, but I think if I want to say he did a
Terrible
horrible
job.
job. He did a horrible job. And I think I think people need to understand that that doesn't look good on him. It also doesn't look good on his party, and he's not, it doesn't look like he's standing up for himself. And that's not a good sign for voters when they're looking at who to vote for. I think also Pierre was being a little bit aggressive, and
His
he was,
aggressive side came back for
yeah.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so that's the problem too, right? And I think the moderator unfortunately didn't step in, and the other parties didn't step in, because they're all attacking Carney anyway. So
Yeah.
I think I get that, right? And so
Yeah, we didn't show it, but both Jagmeet Singh and the block guy whose name always escapes me,
Rachette
also asked Carney a question. That's why he was like, I'm going to ask myself a question.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, and I think Mark Carney should have done a better job, because like, he needs to show that he's standing up for himself, number one, but he needs to show the things that Pierre Poilievre is saying is not true, right? Yeah. And yes, I get people who say, oh, he advised Justin Trudeau. Yes, he advised Justin Trudeau. There's no lying about that. It's on the website, right? But at the same time, it's not always advising the prime minister. That's the problem.
Well, but it's advising, right? Like, he could have given him like completely different advice, and then Justin Trudeau could have been like, you know what, we're going to do this. And they're very different people. That was actually a terrible, in my opinion, appointment, because they're so different, which we can see in Mark Carney's progressive conservative policies versus Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau was much, much further left than Mark Carney. So it wouldn't surprise me to learn that he didn't take a lot of his advice. What we can do, though, is look at Mark Carney's history. As like, I thought this was the one good point he did make. His history as governors, right, of two major banks during two major crises. And you can make that speak for itself and kind of go from there.
And I think people have to realize that, like, even though this wasn't his shining moment per se,
it gets worse.
But at the same time, I think you have to, like you said, take into perspective his leadership and what he's done in the past, right? And like I said, you cannot always think that the prime minister will take the advisor's point of view. Like, we know that from conservative governments, let alone liberal governments, let alone any form of governments. They don't always take their advisor's point of view. And so you need to take a step back and not say he is Justin Trudeau, because he's not Justin Trudeau, like you said in other clips. He's actually his own person, and he has his own view. And so I think people have to understand that is not, Justin Trudeau is not there anymore. And Justin Trudeau is not advising Mark Carney either. And I don't think Mark Carney would also take Justin Trudeau's views either and advice too all the time. So I think Pierre got too much airtime in that clip, to be honest with you. Yeah. And he got too much momentum. So
he didn't really let Mark Carney answer, I think, is part of it.
And he was being too aggressive about it. Like, because they only had so much time, and he was like, let me start with context, and ran out like a whole bunch of the clock, and none of that was context. It was just him pushing stupid campaign slogans. And by the way, if I never have to hear "for a change" again, it'll be way too soon, because I'm sick and tired of that slogan. I thought "axe the tax" was bad. Like, just make your point. Just make your point. And like, honestly, it was exhausting. A bad thing, right? So that's my view, and I'm sure other people share similar, or they may not. But at the same time, look beyond what you see on that screen, right? Look beyond what you see there, and honestly, look and think of it logically, think of it practically, and don't think of it like that. Just because you're an advisor doesn't mean your advice is being taken too, because we know that from every politician or every person who works for their parties or their politicians, they never always take their advice. Yeah. And someone like, Stephen Harper didn't really take advice from people, and yet he had advisors. So do you really think Justin Trudeau would take all of Mark Carney's advice? Probably not.
And they're both kind of like bloated. They have egos.
Yeah.
Like both of them, right? So yeah, it's
All politicians have egos. It doesn't matter.
yeah,
who they
some of
are.
them just hide it better than others.
Yes.
Poilievre. Okay, so let's move on to the massive fuck up that was Mark Carney there. I don't know, maybe I'm alone in this, but what a waste of a question. We have heard this over and over and over again. Given the fact that we just had this China debacle where and people did get mad. So people actually got mad at me for this. I wrote an article a couple weeks ago when this whole thing happened with the conservative candidate who had a bounty on his head from China. And I basically wrote an article saying it's absolute bullshit that Mark Carney stood behind an MP who is saying we should send this Canadian citizen and just give them to China. Like, what the actual fuck? And so to ask about his security clearance, knowing full well, because this has been an ongoing thing in not even in this campaign for over a year, more than that. And we know Poilievre's answer is the Liberals are trying to gag me, blah, blah, blah. I can't have my security clearance. And also I already got my security clearance. And then to have such a fresh moment of this China thing happening, it was basically Mark Carney being like, I'm handing you another win. What was that?
Yeah, it was a bit of a waste. And considering how that previous clip went, and the fact that that he already got kicked in the previous stuff, to bring that up, we know where Poilievre stands on that security clearance. We don't need to know any more about it.
Trump. He could have grilled him more on rights. He could have there are just so many things he could have asked. And we'll get to Trump, but really the only section that they talked about Trump was tariffs. It really didn't dominate, and Mark Carney needed it to dominate, and he tried. There were several different areas where he would try to bring it back to Trump, and just nobody was interested. And he could have forced Poilievre to start saying more about Trump in that moment. But instead he chose this weird ass question that it was like he forgot that might be a thing and didn't plan ahead.
Yeah, and I think the response wasn't the best, if I'm honest with you. And his also his ability to adapt to that, and that shows maybe the fact he's a new politician, I guess now, and I get that. But at the same time, his people working around him should have better prepared him for the situation, right? And I think the problem we have now with Pierre Poilievre is that he dominated that conversation. He was in that conversation the whole time and went on a rant. And Mark Carney just couldn't adapt to that situation, which makes sense based on the fact he's a new politician, but it just didn't help him. It didn't make him look good either. It actually affected him more than here. And to bring up a question about, security, which we know where he stands on it, is just not the right time and right place for that. You need to hit back harder. And if I was an advisor, I'd be very disappointed with what he's done in that situation, because he needs to be stronger and forceful on stuff that Pierre's not standing up for, right? Or standing for. So that was a big problem. And I think Mark Carney screwed up in that situation.
100%. Okay, let's move